So we've been talking about the 4 habits of a disciple, the 4 things we need to have in our lives if we want to continually encounter Christ and experience his love and that transformation that he wants to work in us. We looked at 4 habits from Acts 2:42, the original disciples. What did they commit themselves to? And we focused in already on one of those habits was prayer, and another one was the sacraments, the breaking of the bread, the need to frequent the Eucharist and to frequent confession. What I want to do now is turn our attention to some of those other habits that are mentioned there in Acts 2:42. The first of those I want to look at today is fellowship. I want to talk about the need for Christian fellowship, for authentic friendship in our lives. Other Christian brothers and sisters who are running beside us, who are running after the same ideals that strengthen us and can help us and accompany us on our way. So there's an image that we've often used in Focus from the very beginning called, we call it the burning coals analogy. And the idea is this: if you've ever made a barbecue, so you got the burning coals together, you put them all in one pile together, and then the heat radiates off each other, and they keep really warm when you keep them all together. But what happens if I take one of those burning coals and I separate it from the pile? What's going to happen to that coal that's isolated? Tell me about that coal. What's going to happen? It's going to get cold, right? It's the fire, the flame is going to burn out. It's going to die out. It's going to lose its heat. That's what happens when Christians try to live the Christian life isolated on their own. When they don't make it a priority to find other good Christian friends in their parish, in their community, in their families, in the workplace, to find others alongside them. We can go for a little while on our own, but if we don't have others right beside us, it's going to start to fade over time. We need to be having Christian fellowship on a regular basis. There's a great scripture passage that summarizes this important point. It comes from the book of Proverbs, and it says that iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another. And so that idea is we want to have other men and women in our life that are sharpening us, helping us to get better, helping us to minimize those gaps in our life, to go and imitate Christ more. We need Christian fellowship to do this. You know, I think about this, if you're trying to live your Catholic faith on your own and you're hanging out with people that aren't sharing your Catholic ideals all the time, it's great. We need to have outreach. We need to be friends with people outside of our Catholic bubbles, but do we have other Catholic friends beside us? Here's the challenge. If I don't have others that I can talk to about what really matters in life, if I don't have others that inspire me in the way that they live their marriage or the way they live virtue, the way they care for others, if I don't have others in my life that I notice how committed they are to the Lord, then I'm going to surround myself with people where my conversations are just not that important. I end up talking just about things that don't matter, the latest score or what's trending on social media. And it's okay to look at that sometimes, but I need people that are going to help elevate my mind to think about what matters most: Jesus, our Catholic faith, growing in virtue, living friendship well. It kind of reminds me of when my kids, we're a big soccer family in the Sri family. And so when my kids were early on playing soccer, when they were younger, they just played rec soccer. And they had a rec amateur coach named Dad. But it was just for fun. But my kids loved soccer and they're very athletic. And so on the rec soccer field, they were like Messi. I mean, all of them. They would just dribble around everybody and score. They'd get like 3, 6, sometimes 10 goals a game. Constantly, and rec soccer was really easy. But I knew if they really wanted to get better at soccer, they needed to play with others who were going to push them, going to challenge them. And so they all wanted to do competitive soccer, club soccer, where they try out for a team. And all of a sudden now they're playing with other little Messis that were like them. And many of them were better than my kids were. And all of a sudden they were the star of the rec soccer team. And now they're playing club soccer with people that are so much better than them. And they were like on the bench. They're coming in a little bit. They got a little bit of playing time, but they just weren't as good as everyone around them. But by every day in and day out, practicing with people that were better than they were and playing against other teams that were better than they were, they started getting better over time because iron sharpens iron. And so when they were around people that could dribble better or had better touches on the ball or could pass the ball better or shoot better, like they started learning from that, and it forced them and challenged them to get better. So they were inspired by their peers around them, and they were also motivated to try to compete. And you saw that over time, they started at the low-level club team, and then got a little bit higher, and then over time, they eventually got to the top team. But they would never have gotten on that top team if they just did rec soccer all those years. They would have never gotten on there. Do you have people in your life that are iron that sharpen you? People maybe that are a couple steps ahead of you in life? People maybe you admire them for their devotion to the Lord, or the way they live their family life, the way they care for the poor. Like, do you have some of those people in your life? You need them. We need to be inspired by them. Because when we have Christian fellowship, others that are running after the same Christian ideals, then that's going to rub off on us, and it's going to help us and challenge us. You know, another way of looking at this, I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story about my wife. She's a big distance runner. And so my wife has always loved running. She's done some marathons. She's done a bunch of half marathons, and she loves running 5Ks, 10Ks, you know, and she's really into running. But I know when she's training and she just wanted to keep in shape and keep her sanity and get out, you know, just for a good run, that when she runs on her own, many times she'll actually run as she plans and run her 3 miles or 5 miles, whatever it is that she's planning. But I also know that if she has a plan to run with a running partner, whether it's one of her friends like Kelly or Elizabeth, or she's planning on running with one of our children, if there's a plan and she's committed to run with someone, she is going. And nothing's going to stop her. When she's on her own, if it's like, you know, she's a little tired, oh, I'll just sleep in today. Or, you know, if she's on her own and it's raining outside, maybe she'll still go, but maybe she won't. But it could be a blizzard outside, and if Kelly's waiting for her to go, man, she's going to meet Kelly in the middle of the blizzard, and they're going to do their run. You know, this last year, she went for a run with her friend, and she told me she'd be gone for like an hour or so. I mean, it was like 3 hours later, Beth comes home. And I'm like, honey, what happened? She's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Kelly and I, we just got to talking, and next thing I knew, it was like we ran 12 and a half miles together. And I'm like, 12 and a half miles? I mean, who does that? You just practically ran a half marathon on accident. But that's what happens when you've got that running partner beside you. You go farther, you go more consistently, and that's what you want in your Christian life. Do you have your running partners in your life? Do you have, again, other families, other friends, people that are running beside you? Are you in a small group? Maybe you're in a small group. Maybe you're in a Bible study or a men's group, a women's group. Something like that helps you to come together, those burning coals together. And the heat of other Christians around you is going to make you warmer. The flame of faith is going to take off ever more. So we want to have those running partners. We want to have those burning coals in our life. Now, I want to say this. If right now in your life, maybe you don't have that fellowship. Maybe you're in a new phase of life. Maybe you moved to a new city. Maybe you're in a different situation, and you just don't have that, and you're longing for it. You know, if God has put that desire there, seek it out. Don't just wait and passively hope it's just going to magically happen. Seek it out. So let's say you're at a new parish or in a new city. Go get involved. Go see what small group opportunities there are at your parish, or what is the diocese offering. Seek it out. And sometimes it's hard. Maybe you're in a situation where there's just not as many other burning coals around you. If that's the case, know this. Jesus wants you to have that fellowship. He's made us this way. And you might be going through a little dark period where you just don't have that as much. You don't have it as much as you used to, but pray for it. Ask Jesus. Jesus, I long for some good Christian friends to run alongside me. Pray for it. He wants you to have that even more than you have it. So seek that out. Now, there's another aspect of fellowship that is important to bring out. And that is, not only do we need burning coals to help us get better through their example and their witness and their friendship, we also need to encounter Jesus in our brothers and sisters around us. Jesus wants us to love him in our neighbor. He wants us to love him in our neighbor. So one of the great marks of holiness, according to the great saints, if you want to know how holy am I, you know, if you want to ask that question, the saints would often say, don't ask yourself how many rosaries did you pray, or how much time did you spend reading your Bible, or how many holy hours you did. All those things, as you know, I've talked about, are important. You want to have that in your life. But the real test to see, am I being conformed to Christ? Is Christ really changing me? Am I being transformed into his likeness? The real test is ask yourself, do I love my neighbor? Do I love my neighbor as Christ loved me? Am I living Christ-like love with the people God has placed right around me? So if you're called to marriage, for example, the number one place that you're called to holiness is right there in your marriage. Now, holiness involves going to Mass and the sacraments and prayer. We've already talked about that. But where you're really going to encounter Jesus also is going to be right there in your marriage. Do you love your spouse? Are you loving Jesus in your spouse? When your spouse has a bad day, are you patient? Are you gentle? Are you thoughtful? Are you thinking about them? Are you living like Jesus? Jesus loved gratuitously, freely. He loved not expecting us to do anything back. He just totally gave himself up for us, dying on the cross without expecting anything back. Do you love your spouse that way? I know you say you want to, but many times don't we like, well, that's the third time he didn't say thank you today. You kind of keep that count, or, oh, why is she always like, doesn't she understand? And we kind of keep those little counts in our mind. We're not loving freely. And right there in our marriage is, if we're called to marriage, is the number one place that God wants to mold me. He wants to shape me. He wants to change me. He wants to challenge me to be more like him. In the daily little circumstances that come up every day in marriage and family life, that's where I'm called to be patient like Jesus the most. That's where I'm called to forgive like Jesus. That's where I'm called to love and not expect anything back the most. That's where I'm called to be generous. I'm called to serve. So fellowship is important, like for the burning coals, like we just talked about, but it's also important because that's where my love is going to be tested the most. Many times it's easy to love God when I'm on retreat. I'm in this quiet, peaceful house of God in the tabernacle there. I see Jesus in adoration. I'm just loving being in the chapel. It's great. But when there's chaos going on in the home, your car breaks down, your kid breaks down, it's just like everything's just stressful. Are you going to love Jesus in those moments and in those situations? We need fellowship. We especially need to love Jesus, not just in our families and our friendships and our parishes and our workplaces, but Jesus gives a special group of people he wants us to give particular attention to, and that's the poor. That we're called to love Jesus in the poor. We are called to live out the works of mercy. And that's, again, another sign, like one of the greatest signs in the early church of, are you living the Christian faith? Are you a true Orthodox, faithful Christian? Did you care for the poor? And in the poor, we could think of that, of course, first and foremost as material poverty, but we can also think of that as the many forms of spiritual poverty. As Mother Teresa, Pope Francis, and others have pointed out, there's a great poverty of relationships today, a loneliness in the modern world. People are hungering for love. And so are we going out and loving the poor? Pope Benedict has a beautiful, beautiful explanation of why this is so important for our own holiness. Because when we care for the poor, we're not just doing kind deeds to help other people. That's happening. But when we're doing that, we're actually being changed. That we're becoming more like Jesus. It'd be like this. Like, let's say, if there's a poor person on the street and I go and I'm going to go give them, say here, I give them $20. So I give $20 here. So something has just changed. Something has changed out in the world. I lost $20 in my wallet and the other person is gaining $20 that hopefully they can use for food or shelter, whatever it is. So there's something materially that changes out here, and that's a noble, really good thing. But Pope Benedict makes the point that when I give and I serve, whether it's giving money or giving of my heart and my life in service, something's not just changed for that poor person out here. Something's changed in me in that process. My heart is changing. I'm becoming more like Jesus. That Jesus' love is taking over my heart ever more because I'm living not for myself, I'm living for others. I'm loving him in the poor. And that's what Jesus wants us to do. He wants us to grow in that way. So think about fellowship in all these ways. Think of it in, first of all, the burning coals, that iron sharpening iron. You need those other Christians beside you to help you run, those running partners. But think of it also as the people in our lives. That's where Jesus wants us to love them. There are many Christians that say, I love Jesus in the chapel, and I love Jesus on retreat, and I love Jesus when I go to those Catholic conferences. But man, there's these people that just annoy me in the office place, and there's these family members that I just don't really serve and give, and they think they're being really holy by going out there and doing all those good Catholic things, but they're not living their Catholic faith right there in the people right around them. And so we want to love them those souls right there in fellowship. That's where we encounter Jesus. Now, I want to look at one last habit. So we're going to look at the fourth habits. We've talked about prayer. We've talked about the sacraments. Now I want to turn our attention to, and we just talked about fellowship. I'm going to turn our attention to the last habit, which has to do with the teaching of the apostles. But I want you to think of it as the battle for your mind. The battle for your mind. Right now, there's a battle going on for your mind. A battle going on for your mind, for the way you look at life, for the way you look at what is love, what is truth, what is beauty, what is goodness, what is success, what makes you happy, what is marriage. There's a battle going on for your mind on the most basic things in human life. And the secular world that we live in wants you to think about these things a certain way. You know, sometimes when we think about the secular world, we think of secular means like not religious. And wouldn't it be great if we lived in a religious or a Christian culture? It'd be great if, we had Bible images everywhere and things were supporting our Catholic faith. But, the secular world, it's kind of sad that we don't have the religious images, but we could think of the secular world as just neutral. It's not religious, it's just neutral, very neutral, like Switzerland. I want you to know the secular world is not neutral. The secular world is not neutral. They are not unbiased. They have their own very strong opinions about these most fundamental things in life. What is the purpose of life? What is love? What brings you happiness? Views about caring for those that are weaker. Views about sex. Views about marriage. They have very strong opinions about these things. And sometimes they're the most evangelical preachers about their convictions about what life is all about. And they're constantly bombarding us with image and selling us on a certain way of looking at life. In the movies we watch, in the shows we watch, on our phones, in the music we listen to, constantly bombarding us with a certain view of life. And that view of life is not neutral. Many aspects of that view of life actually undermines what Jesus Christ himself taught about what life is all about, what is love, what really makes you happy. So there's a battle. You need to see this. There's a battle going on for your mind. And if you spend a lot of time out here in the secular world just taking in the latest thing on Netflix and Disney Plus and Amazon, you're taking the latest thing on YouTube and all the social media, and you're feeding your mind with all this stuff, don't think that doesn't affect you. Do not think that does not affect you. I hear Christians say things like this, oh, well, I know, yeah, I listen to that music, but I don't really listen to the words. It doesn't affect me. That is so naive. Don't be naive. Advertisers, major corporations spend millions and millions of dollars to put a 30-second commercial on during the Super Bowl. Why do they do that? Because they know commercials don't affect you. No. They've done all the science. They know how to manipulate you. They put a certain image up so you like their product. You associate the product with this feeling or this image or this pleasure, whatever it is. They know psychologically how to manipulate. That's what they're doing. And they think, they're laughing and going, oh, they think that they are not affected by this. They're laughing when ordinary people just go, I'm not affected. I can just take all this in. My friends, there's a battle going on for your mind. And what you put in your mind matters. And as Christians, we must make a priority that we form our minds with the teachings of Jesus Christ handed on through the apostles and through his church. And that we're aware of the lies that are being told to us in our secular age. I want to share with you a quote from St. Paul. St. Paul gives this very important quote here. He says in Romans chapter 12, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your minds. So Paul saw that Christians living in the Roman Christian community, he understood that yes, they were Christians, yes, they were baptized, yes, they were going to Mass every Sunday, yes, they were believers. Nevertheless, he knew that because the culture around them was not a Christian culture, it was a decadent Roman culture that was constantly getting people to live a different way, he knew that there's going to be a battle. And the battle begins here in how you look at reality. What lens are you going to wear? Are you going to take in all that the secular world is saying and just keep putting on that lens? Or are you going to put on the lenses of Jesus Christ? What we put in our minds matters. I mean, this is the way God made us. He made us in such a way that what we put in our minds shapes how we look at life. It shapes what we perceive to be good and desirable, and thus it shapes our desires. It shapes what we want to pursue in life. So, my friends, what we read, what we look at, what we watch, what we listen to shapes who we become. What am I going to take in? Am I going to keep taking in all the doses of the secular world, or am I going to form my mind with the teachings of Christ? Let me give one example. Young people growing up today, when they watch Netflix, when they're listening to the music that's out there, what is the message of what love is? Love is, you do something for me. You know, think about all the love songs that are out there. They're oftentimes very hyper sentimental and emotional. It's like, oh, you make me feel so good. I can't live without you. Yes, you can. You've lived 18 years without this person. You really can live without them. You know, right? So there's all this, but it's all this hyper emotional, oh, I just need you and you make me feel so good. You know, it's all emotional. So what feelings do you give me? Or it's also super sexual, right? It's like Ed Sheeran love. I'm in love with your body. I'm in love with the shape of you. And though my heart's kind of in it, it's really just about your body. He basically comes out so crassly and says it, that's what love is. And so people grow up hearing this music, and it just shapes their vision of love. But a woman deserves to be loved for so much more than her body. But that's not what our secular world is teaching about love. Love is all about, what do you do for me? You make me feel so good. You give me these emotions, these romantic feelings. You make me feel not alone anymore. You give me this sexual pleasure. That's what love is, what you do for me. Is that Christian love? Is that what Jesus taught us what love is? Jesus taught us love is exactly the opposite. Love is this. Love is the cross. Love is Jesus dying, laying down his life. It's not about what do you do for me. It's him giving himself up, sacrificing himself to serve the good of others. That's what real love is. He's not on the cross saying, you make me feel so good. Real love hurts sometimes when you sacrifice what you want and your pleasure and your comfort to serve something bigger than yourself. That's what Jesus reveals on the cross. And this is just one of a plethora of examples we could look at in terms of what the secular world is saying about life really does shape the way people start thinking and living their relationships. Don't be naive and think that, oh, it doesn't affect me. Because it does. I'll share with you another story. There's a woman who I met on a plane once, ages ago, and it wasn't a young adult. This woman was probably, 38 years old, and she was super professional, dressed like real professional garb. She was going to give a professional presentation for work, but she's also happened to be a devout Christian. She was a Lutheran. She was involved in Bible studies, loves Jesus. And she was asking me where I was traveling and what I was doing, and I shared with her how I was going to this marriage conference. I was speaking on marriage, and she asked me what I'm going to talk about, and I shared with her, well, I'm going to talk about the secular understanding of love and the Christian view of love, and she's listening to all this, like things I just shared with you, and she was just so fascinated, and she says, wow, thank you. I think you just saved my marriage. I'm like, what? She says, yeah, I've been married for 8 years, and I love my husband, but it's just not like it was before, and I've been wondering after 8 years, why is my marriage not like all the love songs I listen to? Why is my marriage not like all the love songs I listen to? Listen, this is a very smart woman. MBA, professional, really successful, smart, intelligent, and a devout Christian. She loves Jesus, involved in her church, in Bible study. But what is her model for marriage and love? What's her model? Is it the Bible, really? Is it what Jesus says? No, she's turning to Delilah, or she's turning to what she hears on iTunes or on Spotify. I mean, she's looking at her love songs and looking at that as the guide for her life. What we put in our mind matters. As Christian disciples, we must make it a priority to be much more discerning about what we put before our eyes, what we put into our heads, what we read, what we look at, what we listen to. It affects us. I'm going to read you a quote from one of the great bishops in our church of the last couple decades. He was Archbishop here in Denver for a while. His name is Archbishop Charles Chaput. Listen to what he said. He talked about the importance of filling your mind with good things, especially reading. That we're losing the art of reading. Many people are growing up and they can't read anything more than a blog. Or they're getting to the point where they can't even read anything more than a meme or some story on Instagram. He says, we must read, above all, the Word of God, but also history and biographies and great novels. If we don't read, we condemn ourselves to chronic stupidity and a conditioning by mass media that have no sympathy for the things we believe. We've got to read Scripture, read about the faith. It's great to listen on Catholic radio. It's great to be a part of video programs like the one we're making here and all. Those are important, but we must also integrate reading, he says. He says, television is not a channel for serious thought. It's often just the opposite, and the internet, for all its advantages, is too often a source of isolation. If we fill our heads with poison and junk, we make ourselves angry and dumb. Whoa! Okay, he didn't hold back any words there. But what he's bringing out is this point that many people today, they think that, if I just, have a couple good, people I follow on social media, see a couple good inspirational quotes every once in a while, I'm doing good with my faith formation. and he's trying to point out, no, we have to be serious Christians that shape our mind because there's a battle for our mind. We need to make it a priority. So how do we form our mind? I'm going to talk about 4 things we could do. 1, read the Bible, read God's Word, make that a part of your regular life. It could be read the gospel reading for every day. It could be as simple as that. Maybe you want to go through some program, read from Genesis to the book of Revelation. You could do that, or just read through one of the Gospels, whatever it is. These aren't just stories from a long time ago about Jesus and Noah and Abraham. No, these are God's words, inspired words. It's God's love letter to you. Read his word. Secondly, the Catechism is another simple, basic text that every Catholic should, maybe you don't read it cover to cover, but you dabble in it. It'd be great if you read it cover to cover. I think that would be awesome. But maybe you just say, I want to learn about Mary and read the sections on Mary. I want to learn more about the sacrament of anointing of the sick. Or I want to learn more about, was Jesus really God? And then go to those sections of the Catechism. It's the summary, the official statement of faith, everything Catholics believe that we have to believe. And that's something every Catholic should have on their shelf, at least read on some regularity to know more about their faith. Third thing, read good Catholic books. There are many great books out there about the Catholic faith. Books, whether it's about apologetics and explaining our Catholic faith, or books about prayer life and spiritual life, books about the moral life and virtues, so books about the saints. Fill your mind with the saints. That's a great thing. If there's any saint you want to learn about, go get their writings or get a book about their biography. Learn about the saints. Instead of, if you fill your mind with just like sarcastic comments from the office all the time, that's just not going to help you when you are facing a crisis in your life. That's not going to help you when your boyfriend breaks up with you. That's not going to help you when you lose a baby. That's not going to help you when you have challenges in your marriage. That's not going to help you when you lose your job. Funny comments on the office, but it's just, you fill your mind with all that stuff all the time. It's just not going to help you. But you fill your mind with the saints, and you remember when that saint faced a trial and a great loss and a great suffering. How did they handle it? What did they do? You have that in your memory bank. When you face trials in life and crosses, you just have what's in your mind to deal with. And if you fill yourself up with stuff that's just not that important, you're not going to have many resources to turn to, but you fill your mind with the wisdom of the church and the saints. Wow. You've got a resource in your soul to help you navigate the challenges in life. Finally, so the Bible, the Catechism, good Catholic books, especially the saints. Last one, faith formation programs. Get involved in maybe your parish is doing a great men's group thing, or maybe there's a faith formation program that you're going through at the diocese. Maybe there's something you're watching online. There's great resources like forum.org you can turn to, and many other places have great things out there. Find good faith formation programs that can help you form your mind. But the last thing I'll leave you with on this front is this. Have you ever seen the movie Les Miserables? Have you ever seen the movie or the musical? It opens up with this dramatic scene of all these prisoners, and they're doing slave-like labor, pulling on these ropes, pulling this massive ship in, and they're all singing this song, look down, look down. And why they're looking down? Because you don't want to look up, because the police, French police and soldiers are up there, and they'll beat you or yell at you if you're not doing your work hard enough, so you just keep looking down in this slave-like labor. And I think what's sad is in our culture today, so many people enslave themselves freely by looking down all the time. They're just constantly looking down at their phones, any spare moment they have. I just pull out my phone, I just look down, and I just look down, and I click on the next thing, and I click on the next thing. And even if it's Catholic, well, there's a little Catholic, nice little quote, I'll like that one. Oh, there's a little Catholic video, I'll click that. And we think that maybe is formation. But my friends, an inspiring quote on social media or some Catholic talk show on Catholic radio or a 3-minute YouTube video is not the kind of faith formation that God is asking of us. Those are great things, don't get me wrong. I mean, it can inspire you, but I think of it more as like good, clean Catholic entertainment. It's fun, it's about good stuff, and maybe you can learn a little nugget, it can inspire, it can encourage you, maybe get a little insight. But God doesn't want you to just be distracted by this thing all the time. He wants you to put this down and encounter Him in silence. And encounter, when you read a book, when you're actually or you're in a faith formation class, your mind is more engaged. You're being formed. You're not passively being entertained by good Catholic things, as good as that is, but your mind is being formed. The ideas that you're taking in become a part of you. That's the real sign. If you're reading a book, you ever read something, you read it quickly, and you're like, oh, I liked it, but I don't know if I could explain it to someone else. And there's other times you read something carefully and you can explain it to someone because it's become a part of you. That's what Jesus wants. He wants to form you. He wants the formation to be a part of you, not just inspire you, not just fill up your day with Catholic things that are at least clean and holy. No. He wants to change your mind. He wants you not to be conformed to this world, but to be transformed by the renewal of your mind. So these are, I hope, some good, helpful encouragements on how we can live this out. So in summary, remember, what are we looking at? We're looking at the 4 habits of a disciple. These aren't just random 4 things that we're picking here. No, these are the 4 things the Catholic Church always turned to sum up what it means to be a disciple. They come right there from the Bible, from Acts 2:42. And so what are those things? We talked about prayer. We talked about the importance of the sacraments. We talked about fellowship. And then we just talked about this battle for your mind, filling your mind with the teachings of Christ handed on through the apostles. Think of those as those logs you add to the fire of your faith life. And so if we can incorporate these and make them a part of our regular daily spiritual lives, we'll continue to encounter Jesus anew, and we can then experience Him changing us, Him transforming us into His likeness.